massacre in Dallas as police are the target of a sniper, and a decision in the Hillary Clinton emails. Welcome to the Mike Broomhead Show.
Well, I got a message, I got a song. Can I get a witness? Tell me what's going on. I show the people I've been away.
You know, it's been such a tough week with news, but nothing more difficult than what we'll talk about in just a moment about Dallas, Texas, and the shooting of police officers. My guest this week, Monica Lindstrom, to talk about the death penalty here in Arizona and around the country. And of course, Broomhead's Best and hashtag this. We got to start the show off with what we call the sweep. In Dallas, Texas, police were ambushed during a Black Lives Matter protest. Now, here's the deal. Black Lives Matter protest started at about 7 o'clock. At about 7:45 in the evening, the Dallas Police Department began to tweet out pictures of the protest. And there were actually some pictures where protesters were posing with police officers, both white and black officers. Obviously some tension. They were protesting police violence, but you could see the relationship was not strained. A little while later, Michael Xavier Johnson, a 25-year-old Army veteran, and we don't know if he's the only shooter. At the time we taped this, he's the only one we know of. He said he acted alone. He began to fire at police officers. In all, 12 police officers were shot, 5 of them have perished, and 2 civilians were injured. Now, as far as what this man had to say as his motive, Dallas Police Chief David Brown, he has done a phenomenal job with this situation as being a strong force, but also a calming force in the city of Dallas. This is what he had to say about the shooter and the interactions they had before the shooter was killed.
The suspect said he was upset about Black Lives Matter. He said he was upset about the recent police shootings. The suspect said he was upset at white people. The suspect stated he wanted to kill white people, especially white officers.
He was upset about the police shootings in Minnesota and Louisiana. Now, if you watch the videos that are out there, and I don't necessarily recommend that you do, there is one video, it looks like security camera footage, where he is moving tactically among pillars, and it looks like it's at the parking garage where he was eventually killed, or at least on the ground floor. And following him is a police officer moving tactically as well. The officer armed with a handgun, this man armed with a rifle. He actually does a misdirection fire where he shoots in one direction to draw the officer's attention. As the officer looked in the direction of that gunfire from around the pillar where he was hiding, the suspect runs around the pillar and executes this police officer with a rifle, about 4 shots at point-blank range. He ends up holed up in a parking garage where he is cornered, and he continues to exchange gunfire with the police. Something we've not seen before. The Dallas Police Department sent in a robot with an explosive device and killed the suspect with an explosive device. That's going to be something that we find out later. That will be something discussed for a long time. Johnson said he left IEDs, which are improvised explosive devices, around the city of Dallas and proclaimed that the end is coming. Now, the death of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile are what motivated this man, but that's not what motivated this guy. He's a man filled with rage. What we found out on Friday now also, an officer in Baldwin, Missouri, just outside of St. Louis, and another police officer in Valdosta, Georgia, shot on Friday. 12 officers in Dallas on Thursday, 2 officers nationwide on Friday. Where does this end? Where does this end? It is absolutely ridiculous. Now, Hillary Clinton, no charges filed. The FBI Director James Comey testifies on Capitol Hill about the Hillary Clinton emails. And he's testifying because he went down a laundry list of crimes that Hillary committed. Thousands of emails had been deleted. 110 of those emails were classified, and of those, 8 of them were top secret. He said they were very, extremely careless in how they handled the email. I thought, oh my gosh, they are going to actually charge Hillary Clinton with crimes. And then James Comey had this to say.
In looking back at our investigations, into the mishandling or removal of classified information, we cannot find a case that would support bringing criminal charges on these facts. All the cases prosecuted involved some combination of clearly intentional and willful mishandling of classified information, or vast quantities of information exposed in such a way as to support an inference of intentional misconduct, or indications of disloyalty to the United States, or efforts to obstruct justice. We do not see those things here.
I can't believe he said it. She broke the law, but we can't prosecute. That's what happened. That's why he testified before Congress this week. That's been a big talking point. Now the House members are trying to get her to not have contact with classified documents because of that report. Stay tuned. Monica Lindstrom, which is our in-house AZTV attorney, joins me to talk about the death penalty here in the state of Arizona. Is it going to be for a long time? What are some of the answers? She's a brilliant attorney. She joins me here in just a few moments. So you're going to want to see this interview. It is something that we're all talking about, the death penalty. We'll be back. One of the most controversial topics in the country is the death penalty and actually how we implement it, lethal injection and the drugs that are used. So I want to talk about that, and we're going to bring in an expert, our own here at AZTV, Monica Lindstrom. Legally Speaking is your blog. And of course, look at this.
Yeah, it's great. It was very
That's
flattering.
terrific. So,
Yes.
so Scottsdale Magazine, you're on the cover.
I am.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
I think
I
it's
appreciate
terrific.
that. Thank you.
But your expertise in this, because you've been on both sides of the desk as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney in the legal world. Let me give you a perspective and then tell me right or wrong in your opinion from what you've seen in this world.
Okay.
I have always been a proponent of the death penalty. I mean, I have no problem with it. I don't have any empathy or sympathy for people that do such heinous things. But when you put somebody on death row for 20-some years, and we make the families of the victims endure appeal after appeal and reopen that wound, it seems to me that we may be doing more of a disservice than a service to the justice system.
I think you're right. That is a very well-worded statement, because a lot of people think the death penalty is such a great thing. Yeah, we should kill them because they killed someone. It's an eye for an eye, which is all true. And you know what? I've been fine with the death penalty. But I also take a step back and say, you know what? The death penalty is really about revenge. It's not about deterrence. It's not about anything else. It's about revenge. We want to take this person out of the world because they took someone else out of the world. And you know what? Like you, I'm okay with it. But the problem is when you peel back the layers and you see what's really going on underneath, or pull back the curtain, there is so much trouble. There's so much money that goes into the death penalty, and all the years and all the appeals and what the victims have to go through. And some even say that the defendants that are on death row for those 20 years, like you said, and here in Arizona, I think the average is about 13 years before they're executed. Some say that that is cruel and unusual punishment in and of itself because they have to be in solitary confinement. So there's a lot of problems with the death penalty. You might like the concept and the idea, but when you look at the reality, it's kind of a pain.
Well, it's the mindset, because you're exactly right when you talk about revenge, which it sounds like a horrible thing. I have no problem if we as a society say, if you take a life, we'll take yours.
I agree.
But we always then try to make ourselves feel better with first of all, the lethal injection. We're going to give you a cocktail of drugs that render you unconscious, then they paralyze you, and then you slowly are supposed to go into the sweet by and by. The night before, surrounded by your family, the meal of your choice.
Yep.
And I think about the families of the victims. I have friends, unfortunately, that this has happened to. And you think about them and what they must endure through the appeals process. And then on that night before the execution, to watch this person surrounded by their loved ones eating like a king, that's got to be suffering that I wouldn't even want to think about. So we're trying to pacify ourselves and make it as nice as we can for us.
Yes.
Is there another solution? I say, you don't want this cocktail of drugs. It might not be what we have in the law. It might not work as well. Or we'll hang you. Or it sounds so cold-hearted, but we're not doing either or. We're trying to pacify our own conscience.
We are.
Is it justice?
Some would say yes, some would say no. We have that little thing called the Constitution, right? And the 8th Amendment says that we can't do cruel and unusual punishment. So that's why we seem to be at lethal injection now, because it's painless, it's harmless, so to speak. They don't feel anything, they pass away peacefully. And you're right, we do that for our own good. People say, let's go back to the firing squad, let's go to the guillotine. But the reality is nobody wants to see that, okay? It's gross, it's violent, it's morbid, nobody wants to do that. So we do it this way for ourselves. The death penalty, I think, is going to end up going away. And the reason why I say that is because it's becoming more and more expensive and more difficult to implement the death penalty. And why do we want to put everybody through the years and the years and the years of the appeals process? It's not actually killing somebody that's the difficult part. It's everything that leads up to it. It's expensive, time-consuming, and emotional.
And it almost appears as after the conviction, the victims' families are set aside, and then the defendant or the perpetrator becomes the victim.
Absolutely.
And then it's tearing apart their life and the horrible life they had. And I never want to take the focus off of the crimes they've committed. We've looked at some of the death row cases that have been sent back for retrial, or if the death penalty's been taken off the table. And there's not an ounce of sympathy for some of the people. I wanted to refresh my memory, and I wish I had, about some of the cases we're talking about where the lethal injection drug took longer to work than it should have. When you go back and look at the heinous crimes that those people committed, I look at them and I think it's really hard for me to have sympathy for you.
Oh, right. And I don't think most people have sympathy for the person that had the botched execution. Like Joseph Wood back in July 2014 was Arizona's last execution. And it was the drug cocktail that was used didn't work as expected. It wasn't botched, it just took longer. And so people were afraid that he was in some kind of pain or something. The majority of people don't care if he was in pain because of what he did. It's just that they see that it's cruel and unusual if he suffered pain, which makes us feel bad. It makes us feel like we're on the same level as a killer.
Which I never want to go to. There are those who say, listen, put him on pay-per-view, and I'm not a proponent of that. So in a minute, I want to talk with you about solutions. And I really would like to dig into the justice system with you, because I am so fascinated with how we prosecute and why we prosecute and the reasonable expectation of conviction. So if you don't mind, we'll take a quick break and we'll talk about that. Monica Lindstrom is with us. She is our expert attorney, and I always want to be around someone smarter than me because, well, it's not hard to find. So we'll be back. All right, we are back with Monica Lindstrom talking about the justice system in Arizona and the death penalty especially. So you think the death penalty is going to end up going away?
I do.
Nationally?
Yeah, I actually do. The Supreme Court, way back when, did put a moratorium on the death penalty across the country because it was being handed down unevenly. Nobody was consistent about it. So the Supreme Court said, I'm going to stop it until you all figure it out, and once it's consistent and not cruel and unusual punishment, then it's put back in place. It was put back in place. Now we're at another issue where drugs just can't be found to do the lethal injection anymore. Here in Arizona, we have a stay on all executions since July of 2014. Judge Neil Wake over at the Federal District Court put a stay on everything because right now we don't have the drugs to do the lethal injection. And
the manufacturers said we don't want our drugs being used to kill people. And I understand that. I mean, as a physician, do no harm. And if you're a pharmaceutical company, if the drugs you're manufacturing to help and aid life are being used to take a life, if it's against your moral compass, I have no problem with a company saying, I don't want our drugs used for that.
I don't have a problem with it either, but that's where we stand, is Arizona doesn't have enough drugs or the right drugs to implement the death penalty right now. I don't think they're going to get it anytime soon. In fact, in court last week, they said, we don't know where we're going to get drugs now. So as of right now, it's all on hold.
So let's shift gears for a moment about the justice system, because people think just build more prison beds and it's going to solve, if we got that many criminals, make sure there's enough beds. But having been through the system, not as a defendant, but as a victim, there was a time where they say we have to weigh the hours we have to man a case. And I'm sure you've gone through that yourself. If you don't have this reasonable expectation of conviction, you've got other cases you have to worry that may have a higher priority.
Yeah.
So for someone that may be the victim of a lesser crime, like in my case it was a shoplifting thing that I stopped, I understand that if they've got an aggravated assault or an attempted murder, why would they spend the hours on my case they don't have. It's a bigger problem when there's not enough people in the system, not judges, not prosecutors, not defense attorneys. Is that really more towards fixing the problem if there's more people in the justice system?
I don't think really there's ever a way to fix the problem. Since the beginning of time, there's always been criminals, there's always going to be crimes. It's never going to stop, it's not going to go away. We're never going to get to Minority Report or was it Demolition Man where they know what's going to happen in the future. Not going to happen. So we had to figure out how to deal with it now. And when you talk about man hours, a prosecutor's job is just not to convict. It's just not to take to trial. The prosecutor's job is to do what's in the interests of justice. And sometimes that means pleading out those smaller cases because a shoplifting, yeah, it's harmful, but it's not as harmful as an aggravated assault. So if they have to plead some of that out to be able to put their man hours and their significant resources towards the crimes that can really hurt people, then that's what needs to happen.
See, and when you say that as the listed as the victim, I did, in my opinion, in the estimation of most people, I mean, it would have been easy for me in this fist fight to do some damage to someone, and I didn't. I held them at bay until the police got there.
Good job.
Okay,
Yes.
but then when it came time to prosecute, when the prosecutor's office said, we really don't have time to do that, that's not justice to me.
Yeah,
As
I
the
can
victim,
understand that.
So as people that may be the victims of crimes, I understand what you're saying. Intellectually, it makes perfect sense.
Right.
In a perfect world,
Yeah.
you've got the man hours in your office as a prosecutor to prosecute everybody fairly. Just not ever going to happen, is it?
I would say that no, you don't have the man hours. You don't have the resources to prosecute every single crime fairly. You just can't. Some things have to go by the wayside or some decisions have to be made, and they're tough decisions. I think when it comes to the victims, because Arizona has that Victims' Bill of Rights, so the victims are entitled to certain things, you need a prosecutor and a victim's advocate that can speak to that victim and explain to you, here's what's going on, here's why this can be justice, and what can we do to help you feel better about this. I know that's a little touchy-feely, but it's important, and I think if that had been done, maybe you would have felt a little bit better about the situation.
Ultimately, it was handled, and I felt really good about the way it was handled.
Good.
But it's not ever being in the system, thankfully. You see it from the outside, and
Yeah.
everybody thinks they have a solution. But
There's
it's-
no solution.
Yeah.
There's no solution. We're always going to have crime. There's always going to be concerns for justice. It's just the way it is. All we can do is manage it.
All right, so the death penalty, in your opinion, goes away how quickly?
I used to say a decade. Now I'm in about 6.5 years. Nationally, I think it's going to go away.
All right, we're going to hold her to that. Monica Lindstrom, she's here at AZTV, KTAR.com with Legally Speaking, and the So Scottsdale magazine cover. So you are everywhere. Thanks for coming on my show.
Thank you.
We'll be back. We have a new feature here on the Mike Broomhead Show. It's called From Arizona for America. It's our way to congratulate and thank the Arizona men and women who have graduated from boot camp and are now serving and defending our country. So please join me in honoring Airman First Class Nathan Lawson from Basha High School in Chandler, Airman First Class Peyton Murray from Valley Vista High School in Surprise, Airman Kerry Alexander from Corona del Sol High School in Tempe, and Second Lieutenant Elizabeth Hover from Camp Verde High School in Camp Verde. For a list of more of our friends and neighbors that are from Arizona for America, go to the Mike Broomhead Show page at aztv.com. We'll be back in a moment with Broomhead's Best and hashtag this. Don't go away. We always do something Arizona and something we love to bring to you. We call it Broomhead's Best. Paul Goldschmidt earns his 4th All-Star Game appearance. This season alone, 15 home runs, 56 RBIs, a .416 on-base percentage, 88 hits. He's 2nd in the National League with 63 walks and 8th in stolen bases. Well deserving of his 4th All-Star selection and truly the bright spot on the Arizona Diamondbacks. The problem is, can they keep him? Because he is such a great superstar, does he deserve to go somewhere and win a pennant? I hope he stays here because I love Paul Goldschmidt. Now we do something we call hashtag this. Hashtag Joey Chestnut. He regains the mustard yellow international belt. He wins the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, breaks the record that was set in 2013 by eating 70 hot dogs and 70 buns in 10 minutes. I don't know if I could eat 70 hot dogs in a lifetime, and this guy does it in 10 minutes. So congratulations to him. He wins the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. It makes me sick to watch, but I can't take my eyes off the screen. In a moment, we wrap up the show, we finish things off, so stick around. As we try to absorb the shock of what we saw happen in Dallas, Texas, where police were targeted by a sniper, I want you to think about the profession of law enforcement for just a minute. It is one of my biases. I am unashamedly pro-law enforcement. And the reason is, as that gunfire happened, they actually shielded the protesters that were protesting police violence. They made sure that the protesters and civilians got to safety while their own comrades were being targeted and gunned down. That is the police profession. And then in the days that follow that shooting, those officers went back to work even though their comrades were dead. 12 officers shot, 5 dead, and the city of Dallas was never not patrolled. That is really the profession of law enforcement. Keep that in mind. And in the city of Phoenix, it's shameful that they didn't cancel the protest. All right, next week, Priscilla Ornelas joins me to talk immigration. You're going to see a face you've not seen before on the immigration issue. Have a great week. God bless.
Get more of Mike Broomhead on Facebook, Twitter, and of course weekday mornings from 6 to 10 on News Talk 550 KFYI.